So my name is Drew Beeman. I'm here today to train you on what I'm calling process-oriented everything, because it's not just process-oriented art, although that is the focus. It's going to be about like everything that we do in our field. It's all about the process. And so to tell you a little bit about myself, I was born in no, that would take the rest of the day. But I grew up in a small town, Bath, New York. And when I was a kid, it was the late 70s, early 80s. So and growing up, there were two things I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be a Muppet, or at least a Muppeteer. I did realize that they were puppets, and I wanted to be a Muppeteer. And I also wanted to be a Jedi. Which we actually made these with the children, paper towel tubes, duct tape, Sharpies, little lightsabers, flip it on your belt. We had a great time with these. Good thing for me that Yoda is a Muppet and a Jedi Master, so there is a chance someday maybe for me to have that in my life. The other thing that was really strange about my childhood, or not so strange depending on who you talk to, I was raised by a wild pack of clowns, and I wrote a little children's book about it with actual photos from my childhood, and I'll pass this around. Because back in the early 80s there was a lot of like church outreach, had for some reason clown ministries all around, like especially in New York. And so my parents were involved in the church ministry with the clowns, and then I was in this church where it was clowns everywhere all the time. Some people might think that's strange. But I'll pass this around. Please be careful because it's kind of falling apart. But it's kind of an interesting story. It might explain a little bit why I'm kind of the way I am, a little bit. So I have a lot of influences in my teaching style and in my career. Teacher Tom is one of them. If you've ever heard of Teacher Tom, or if you haven't, you should. His blog is awesome. He has a cooperative preschool out in, I think it's Seattle, Washington. And he's a male teacher, so of course I'm kind of cool about that because it's kind of rare. I've been working in this field since 1999 in like child care centers, and then babysitting since I was 11 years old. I won't tell you what year that was. 1990. So, Teacher Tom, his blog spot, if you want to write this down, is really great. You can probably Google it too, but I mean, I'll just scroll down a little bit and you'll just see some of the pictures, because he has this really, it rains all the time in Seattle, and he has this great outdoor environment. They call it the outdoor classroom. And if you go through he's got so many blogs, and there's just pictures of all kinds of things. That's like a rope going up this incline. I mean, they do so much on his. His articles are kind of long, so I think he teaches every day and then he goes home and blogs about it. But you can just see, very natural. It rains a lot, so they're out there in the mist and the rain all the time. He does not take rain as an excuse to not go outside. But he's one of my biggest influences, I would say, in his teaching style. This quote I'm going to read comes directly from him in his blog. Making discoveries, learning how to make discoveries, learning how to pursue an interest or a question or a passion that leads to discoveries is at the heart of a progressive play-based education. So that's from him, and he really has, he goes pretty far. Like, he even has hot glue guns in the preschool classrooms, so they can just create, and brings in a bunch of recycled materials and glues it all. Yeah, it takes a lot of supervision to do that. Lucky he has, like, the parents of the program have to be in the classroom with him, so they have tons of adults, so he's able to do that, so I understand that not everybody can do that. His school is pretty interesting because the teachers, or he's the only teacher, and the parents in the program are also like his employees in the classroom, like he's their supervisor sort of in the classroom and kind of bosses them around. But they're the board of directors as well, so they're his boss outside of the classroom. Very interesting. I'd like to see how that really works out in reality. Another big influence for me is Lisa Murphy, the Ooey Gooey lady. If you're not familiar with her, here's her website, Ooey Gooey. I think it's ooeygooey.com. She is from Rochester. She briefly had a child care center, and I worked there. It was wonderful. And she's written, this is like, I think, her first book about kind of how she got into the field. This is the Ooey Gooey Handbook, which has like a whole bunch of recipes and activity ideas. We'll probably look through some of this for some of our making tape today. And then Ooey Gooey Tooey is another Ooey Gooey Handbook, but it's part 2. And this was actually made while I was working with her at her preschool, and all the pictures are from our school that was in Greece, bordered Rochester and Greece. And there's a few pictures of me in here, but there's all kinds of wonderful activities in here, which you can buy on our website. some of my other influences, especially more recently, kind of moving around a lot, is one of the first books that I think really captured my understanding of toddler development was this one called The Happiest Toddler on the Block. And it basically comes from the premise that toddlers are cavemen. They are, you know, ancient humans, or not even. And it's very interesting. So like the archetype for toddlers is Bam Bam from the Flintstones. And if you work with toddlers, you know, Bam Bam Bam, and everything's that, and everything's that. You know, they just throw everything around and knock everything off tables, and they got a hammer, and they got, you know. So I work with toddlers currently. I don't know why I just threw that. This is also representative of me and my life with toddlers especially. Yeah, crazy. And then this kid, if you don't read another book this year, this is the one you should read, in my opinion. Free Range Kids. If you're familiar with this is a mom who in New York City let her, I think, 9-year-old go and ride the subway by himself. And I think she got a lot of. Oh my goodness, did she get it? So she was like, I think she blogged about it or she wrote for a newspaper or something, and she ended up being invited to the Today Show and you know, other shows like that, and she's thinking like, ooh, this is going to be good, right? And they just let her have it. They called her the worst mom in America, and like just let her have it. And it was horrible what happened to her, because now she's written this book. She started a little bit of a movement among early childhood educators, among parents, and she exposes the media monster for what it is, a fear culture propaganda machine. One of the points that she makes in here, and I think is a big point, is if you turn on the television and 24-hour news networks, what you're going to see a lot of is just constant stories about child abductions. And it just puts this fear into all of us to let our children out of our sight. She found out that statistically speaking, the chances that your child will be abducted are something like 1 in 1.4 million is your chance. So we're like helicoptering over our children, ruining their development, destroying their sense of independence, because we're so afraid of what could happen. And I was the kind of kid who walked, you know, like our backyard bordered on a cornfield, even though we lived in the village. So I was out, and my mom would just like go, and she didn't know where we were. There were no cell phones, you know. There was no parent supervision. We were fine. The worst thing that happened was maybe a few rocks through a few police car windows, but that's another story. The second book this is hard to put him in an order, but this one is by Dan Hodgins. If you've ever heard of him, he's a real advocate, especially for boys. And he talks about different ways of disciplining than we're used to, and the reasons why. And I think this one's a really good one. I learned a lot from this one. It's really hard to take this book and then apply it, because usually you have a director or somebody, no offense to you, a director or somebody saying, I don't know if we're ready for that, or if the families are ready for that. Because you are also in the service industry, and you're serving families, and sometimes they don't always like what you're doing. And like he talks about taking pool noodles and using them as swords. And he talks about superhero play and gun play and stuff like that. So a little controversial. But I really, really like it, and if I had my way in my perfect world, we would be doing that. I have brought in, I wish I had pictures of it, I have brought in pool noodles and had little sword fights with the kids, and it's awesome. And it gets that aggression out. It gives them a safe avenue to role play violence. It gives them a safe avenue to do what toddlers do, especially, you know, with each other. And I think it's been proven to actually reduce like real violence in the classroom, even action figure play. And so he talks a lot about especially what boys need. And the main premise of this book is children that take you to the end of your rope, you just need a longer rope. You're the problem, not the children. He gets a little, you know, like, hey. But it's all about our growth and professional development, which I think is very important for us as teachers, to especially stay current, which brings me to the next book. Staying current with brain research, evidence-based practice, very important. This is Mind in the Making by Ellen Galinsky. And she identifies 7 essential skills that children need and adults to really be successful at life. And the first one is focus and self-control. So you find ways to teach children focus and self-control, self-regulating skills and what have you. Perspective taking. We used to think that children were all egocentric, especially toddlers. Now I still believe that to a certain degree, but there is some research to show us that there might be they might be able to have a little bit of empathy even that young. And we can foster that and see it grow. But I still think they're very egocentric in general. But to help children change perspectives and shift their perspectives and try to understand from other people's point of view. Communicating. Who doesn't need more help in learning how to communicate more appropriately? Especially me. Making connections between one thing and another and categories of things. That's one of the base life skills. Critical thinking, obviously. I think one of the things that we've done in the past maybe 10, 15 years that has been somewhat of a disservice is when children don't develop critical thinking skills because we're always telling them what they need to know. If you've heard of this, between direct instruction and constructivism versus instructivism. We know now that we need a little bit of direct instruction, but really we want people to play. We want children to play and learn through the play. We don't need to have adults sitting there talking about what color's that, what shape is that, because all that the kid may be thinking about something completely different, and here's an adult imposing. That's not to say there's not going to be some kind of scaffolding where you'll help the children learn, and there's probably more appropriate ways to bring some more instructivism in and direct instruction. But finding ways that make it fun, make it like play, it's not drill and kill, and also just getting the open-ended questions, getting them to think for themselves. Critical thinking skills, I think, are really detrimental, and I think we've sort of raised a generation, no offense to any young people, raised a generation that really have trouble with some of that kind of stuff. Skill number 6 is taking on challenges, allowing children to take risks, which I think some of these other books talk about too, allowing them to take risks, allowing them to climb up the slide, to jump off the thing that looks too high to the adults. I mean, I used to climb up trees, and then I couldn't get back down, and I'd be crying up in the tree, like, who's going to help me get down? Because I went too high, but I never got broken. I never fell out of a tree. I've never broken a bone. And I used to do a lot of tree climbing and tree house building when I was like even 6 years old. So children are not made out of glass. They need to take risks in order to be successful in life. And then the last skill is self-directed, engaged learning. So this is one of the, I think, more revolutionary books recently. She compiled, there's a lot of data and research kind of stuff in it too. And another book that I just finished reading, which I think is, learning how to apply some of this stuff is going to be very interesting. It's called Brain Rules, 12 Principles for Surviving and Thriving at Work, Home, and School. And he talks a lot about education reform in here because this is all based on current brain science and research that's being done. There's a lot we don't know, but he says the things we do know, here's 12 rules for things that we do know. Exercise boosts brain power. Survival, the human brain evolved as well, and he talks about sort of how our brains came to be the way they are. Every brain is wired differently. Pay attention. We don't pay attention to boring things. Short-term memory, repeat to remember. Long-term memory, remember to repeat. Sleep well and think well. Stressed brains don't learn the same way. Stimulate more of your senses. Vision trumps all other senses. Male and female brains are different. And exploration, we are powerful and natural explorers. So he goes into detail about all these things and some of the studies that have been done. One of the things that it talked about in here with the memory, talks about every 10 minutes or so you need to have a hook to keep people's attention and so that they'll actually retain the information that you're shoving down their throat, so to speak. So I'm probably going to spontaneously erupt with some humor or interesting things from here, different points to keep the attention and hope that your memory remembers what we're talking or what I'm talking about. And remember this training. So what I have today is basically based on just a slideshow from pictures of some work that I've done with children. I'm a little bit limited. I don't have a lot because you're not always allowed to take pictures of work, and there's issues there. As well as there's only 2 centers that I've worked at since I started collecting those pictures. So let's see if I can get the computer to work the right way. Okay, so first we're just going to talk about play. So in this, can you see that? Is it kind of dark or does it look okay? That is a gutter. Now you can buy gutters at Home Depot, 10 foot for like $10. And then they will cut them in half for you. I might duct tape the end if it's sharp or whatever, but I like to put a lot of gutters. This is from a toddler classroom, obviously hammers, right? And a farm. Toddlers need to throw. They are going to throw. They are going to throw toys if you do not provide blocks. They are going, if you do not provide balls, they are going to throw blocks and other toys that can hurt. So I always redirect children to balls. And we have these soft little fuzzy balls. You can crumple up paper and wrap tape around them and make tape balls. They're not going to hurt anybody. If you have those little hollow floating, those ones that will float on water, those little hollow blue and red and yellow balls that you see, I think Lakeshore makes them. Those are good too. So we have a basket in our toddler room. of balls, and anytime a child throws something, they're immediately redirected to the balls. Yes, you may throw balls. No, you may not throw blocks, toys, etc. That's the kind of language that I use because we want the children to know that they can always throw. And when they know they can always do something, they're less likely to just do it all the time when they're not supposed to, and with materials they're not supposed to. So if they know they can rip paper whenever they want, if they just ask, they'll stop ripping stuff off the wall eventually. It doesn't happen overnight. The other thing with toddlers, the hammer bench, obviously they bang on everything, and if they have a block and it's noisy and drives you nuts, redirect them to the hammer table. So I always have hammers out in the toddler room. I always have push toys, because that'll reduce the pushing of children, hopefully. They'll push toys. I always have balls to redirect for throwing. I try to always have a dry and a wet sensory table separated across the room. Not that you can't bring them together and actually encourage that, maybe not with toddlers, but older toddlers maybe, and see what they come up with. So right here we have a empty bookshelf. It's one of those little shelves that you can kind of crawl under, and there's 2 holes cut out so they can crawl inside there and sit inside there. And we decided to put the gutters down, so when they roll the balls down the gutters, they would collect in there instead of chasing them across the room. Next is another kind of the same thing. So we had a gutter coming down off of a shelf, connected to another gutter, balancing on the basketballs, and then down into the shelf. As you can see, there's blocks behind there. The quality stars, I think you have to have 3 different types of blocks in the block area at all times. These are tongs from the dollar store. Toddlers especially love to make messes and dump everything, right? But they don't always pick up afterwards. Because making a big mess and dumping everything and throwing it off the table is large motor. But cleaning up is fine motor. So somebody wise once said, give them tongs to clean up, and encourage them to use the tongs to clean up their toys. And guess what? It works because it's large motor. And it's something, it's like an activity, it's fun, it's play. So those are from the dollar store. They're a little bit junky, they're a little bit sharp. We got a few cuts, so I actually wrapped them all in duct tape to make this. Now it's like all duct tape. There she is again. This is, I really believe in using materials that are, obviously developmentally age appropriate, but as well, like just real clay tiles with real clay. And so we had a parent who did like tile floors for a living, so he brought in all the samples. So we had these real clay tiles, and we got real clay, and we were showing like masonry how they put it together. And so the kids were really into that. I want everything to be meaningful and relevant to the children, as well as fun. So materials should be genuine too. I mean, like if you're talking about apples, do you just? It's kind of like frozen or something. Like you talk about, you'll see a picture later with Play-Doh, and children need to learn to cut with knives. So I don't give them sharp knives, but I do give them those like metal. There'll be a picture here. Oh, you got it to work. Where the materials are real and authentic. It's one of those big mayonnaise spreaders, those metal ones, again from the dollar store, so it's only $1. And I use that, call it a Play-Doh knife, and it won't cut anybody, nobody's ever gotten cut with them, but it's exactly, it looks like a chef knife. Yeah. There's just more of the clay tiles. Okay, this is a rubber band board. I'm sure you have those. This, it's interesting, I tell that that's a 3-year-old, just a 3-year-old. It was a little bit beyond her and most of the kids in the 3-year-old classroom, but it's a good place to I like to introduce things even if it's not quite there yet, just to see what they can do with it. Eventually they got to do a lot of really great things with it. I like to tell them that they're doing college level math because we did rubber band boards in my math class in college, because it was teaching math to elementary teachers. So we did rubber band boards, so I'm like, you're doing college level math! And then the same thing with pattern blocks. We did pattern blocks, tangrams in college, so I like to tell the kids that, and they seem like, it sounds exciting. You write that on something that the parents see that, and they're like, oh my goodness. Looks impressive. It's really just play, because that's how we learn, right? We know that. So let's see. Next. These we actually just bought from Lakeshore, I believe. These are called Geo Builders. They have a suction cup on them, and they're just like a octagon. I don't even know what 3-dimensional octagon is called, but those are kind of cool. It's just open-ended materials, so they just figure out what they want to do with it, be creative, learn in the process, learn thinking skills, I guess. Especially like with blocks, you have to learn about physics. Kind of the same thing here. You learn about suction cups. You learn how to make it fall at an angle, or what have you. And it's all about the process. I don't need them to build this beautiful thing. I just want to see the process when you're, just turned 2 and you're able to use your fine motor skills and maybe even learn how to make them balance because they do kind of fall over. And just to see that learning process. That's what our goal is for them to be able to learn through their play and all the process that comes with that. Hammer time. We're going to talk about that. So we have those little plastic ones for toddlers. Okay, they turn 3. According to the ITers, you can now, I think at 3, you can now have styrofoam. I could be wrong about that. You can have styrofoam in the classroom. So we get the extra styrofoam and golf tees and hammers. Teacher Tom brings real hammers in and says that nobody ever gets hit with the real hammers, where the plastic hammers, they get hit all the time. I'm not ready for that. I do believe it, because I've seen it before. When I was a kid, I played with hammers. Really young. My dad was hand tools, and I never hit anybody with it. You give me a plastic hammer, and you hit everybody. So, hanging monkeys, barrel of monkeys, remember those when you were a kid? They still sell them. Somebody had this little shelf, and for children, hanging things. It's great. Suspending. We say suspending. You ever heard of suspending the flubber? When you make the flubber, and then you hang it up in something and it drizzles down, and you can spin it, and it does all these cool little coiling up on the table or whatever. Suspending is wonderful and fun, and I think it teaches a little bit of science, physics. Right here, this child was very creative. He made this train out of Legos, and then he took a red block out of each one. He just had that kind of mind. He's just turned 3. He's going to be on the quote him a lot because he had some very interesting things to say. A lot of the pictures of the things are things that he came up with on his own. I provide materials, I set up the environment, and I back off if I can. You got to be present, you have to be supervising, every minute, but I don't want to just sit there and helicopter mom, if you know what I mean by that term, over the children and just hinder what they're doing. A lot of times children won't do things that explore if there's an adult right there constantly in their face. So I like to set it up safe and fun and let them explore. There he is again with those magnet balls and rods. Those are great. They had lost their magnetism because after a while they don't work as well, so we couldn't do a lot of 3D stuff with them. But he just kind of built that and it was beautiful. They also, I wish I had a picture, one day they stuck those on all the bolts and nuts in the class on the furniture. And I come around, I'm like, who did this? Like, well, the kids just kind of figured it out. Hey, that part, it's all wooden shelves. That part it sticks to, this part it doesn't. So they learned that science about magnets just from playing with these things. And exploring. What did you do before? And shaving cream. I don't know if you have a rule here about shaving cream. I will say this, the ITER says you can't use food and shaving cream with toddlers in art. It didn't say sensory. But some people see it as toxic, so if your director says shaving cream, it's a Cool Whip. Toddler's going to eat it all anyway, so you might as well just use Cool Whip. But we do, I like to talk about masonry, because kids have no idea. Adults have no idea how to build buildings anymore, or what masons do. People think that's like some club with weird hats and a bunch of men in suits and stuff. But the masons actually build brick. So we put blocks and shaving cream, and then they would paint out, with a popsicle stick, just spread out the shaving cream and stick blocks together. They love it. It's messy. It's fun, and they're learning something. Maybe someday they'll have a big career. I actually like have this thing about the trades. Like, see, I grew up in a small town where if you went to BOCES to learn a trade, you were ridiculed and picked on. But now I'm looking back and I'm like, all those kids are making twice as much money as I am, and twice as much money as the other kids I went to school that all have careers with bachelor's degrees in whatever. Because job market stinks. Getting into debt with college right now, so I think we should be encouraging children to go into the trades. I know a guy, 18 years old, he was actually homeschooled and learned a trade, and by the time, I think he was maybe 19 or 20, within 2 years of starting his business, he was a millionaire building log cabin homes in Maine. 19-year-old millionaire, homeschool kid, because he learned a trade. You know what I mean? Here I am, preschool teacher, went to college, I'm almost dead, blah, blah, blah. And you know what we make. Some of us make more than others, but it's, it's still not, I don't know anyone in my field, even the ones that get paid the most and have their master's degrees, make way less than you get with a master's degree in public school or something else. Again, more pictures that you can see the popsicle stick over there, and the process in their minds of what's happening. Okay, so regular block building, you learn about physics and you learn how to balance, but then the shaving cream adds a whole other element to it. So there's some more critical thinking skills going on here. These kids are just turned 3. And this, okay, you probably have seen these nuts and bolts sets that you can buy. So we have these in the classroom, and I put them out one day, and I'm like, what? They're just, who's gonna, how many kids do you know that have the attention span just sit there and, oh, yeah, I'm gonna match up the different shapes, and I'm gonna unscrew these things, and they're not boring, right? Okay, boards, let's make some boards. So I got out some cardboard and poked holes in them, and then I showed the children kind of how to connect them once, and then I backed off, and then they figured it out, and they build these long things, and they kind of move, that you can like, they will pivot, or if you tighten them, they won't pivot. But if they're loose enough, they'll pivot, and you can move the boards around, and you can build different things. Again, it could be a trade someday for somebody, looking in construction, or carpentry, or what have you. There's some more. Just cardboard box cut up, real simple, but they loved it. They spent a long time doing it. I was really surprised. Here's pattern blocks. Wow, this child's being innovative. It's not just pattern blocks, it's building a 3D structure with pattern blocks. Nobody suggested it. I just turned around. I think at this time I was in another part of the classroom taking a picture. And then I turned around and put the camera back on the shelf, and I saw that, and I had to get a picture of it because the child just kind of went through the process in their own mind and did it. Again, I think just turned 3. Pegboards. Pre-math. That's another one. We did pegboards in college math. So I like to tell the children, you're doing college level math. Here's the controversial. PVC pipes. Okay, these kids are 2.5. What do you think they're going to do with them? Right? Bam! Well, with enough adult supervision, you can teach them how to use materials appropriately. So, open-ended materials, right? Here's a bunch of connectors, here's a bunch of, the PVC pipes, go. So they made various things, and then we added a pool to them. And if you do it right, if you have enough, we didn't have enough, you can like put blankets over it and have like one of those little wagons from the west, or a tent of some kind, Speaking of tents, there was a little adult help with the construction of that, obviously, because it was a brand new introduced material. I would say 4s and 5s would really love the PVC pipes. Okay, you don't have to be rich to have a child care center. We're gonna make a bunch of stuff that you can spend a ton of money to buy. We're gonna make it, and it's gonna be from really cheap materials. Right here, this was some kind of insert in like a box, like a TV or a computer came in the box, or somebody ordered something from somewhere, and this was just one of those little inserts, and it was kind of weird looking. And I said, that looks sort of like the foundation of a castle. So I'm going to bring it in, and we brought the blocks out, and you have that, and that was sort of the base, and then they built their castles and things from there. Recycling is awesome. String and beads, I'm sure you children have motor skills, creativity. So here is counting bears, okay? So they do make big ones for toddlers. I call them sorting bears, because I don't know how many people are counting them, sorting them. But she's using the hand tongs. We can make some of those today. Again, cheap materials, you don't have to go to the dollar store and buy the big tongs. You had small tongs, various sizes. And we had a game where we would take out of the box with tongs. Again, it's fine motor skills, pre-writing for the pincer grasp, and pre-scissors, because it's sort of the same. Scissors a little bit different, but it starts to teach those skills. Again, it's the process. And of course, you can see in the picture, there's the wrong color bears in the cups. Oh no! You're supposed to put the purple bears in the purple cups. Well, that's not. So this, again, real logs, so real materials, fake tools. I would love to have real tools, maybe 4 and 5, and a center that would let me do that. I haven't found very many. So these children just got, just put out the logs, put a couple of the blocks in there, threw the tools out, and they came in and they were tickled. Sometimes they would put on the construction helmet, and then we had like a smock that has, like, it says carpenter or something on it. Sometimes they would bring the dramatic play into the block play. This is why I design classrooms a little differently. A lot of people like to have like the defined space with the shelves, and this area is closed in with these shelves, and this is the block area. And then the kid takes the block over here, put it back in the block area. Sometimes you hear that a lot. Well, I would like to see it flow. And this is one of the examples where the blocks flow into the dramatic play, and then you've got the whole child, right? You don't just have social, emotional, cognitive. You've got the whole child. So you don't just have dramatic play and then blocks. They're very separate, compartmentalized in our brains. A real job, a real carpenter uses wood and has to learn how to chop 2x4s, and that's like block play. But it's also, dramatic play teaches children self-control. Dramatic play is probably going to be the biggest thing that's going to come and bring changes to our field. With the tools of the mind that there's really doing a lot of research with, and really attempting to make really good programs out in the West Coast. Tools of the mind, it's a lot of dramatic play. We're finding the benefits to the children are just amazing. Hopefully we'll see after a generation of that what they're like. This child, again, it was that really creative child who put all the blocks on there. I just put out blocks, put out trains, I walked away, and then I come back. He's got this whole thing built. He starts building the tunnel himself. I mean, the kid was just, I think he was allowed to play at home, just play in his room. And he just came up and he was just so creative. And he had just turned 3. So there he is, he's building a longer tunnel. And there's the finished product. The process that went into that finished product. So that block structure is probably about as tall as him, maybe taller. Some people are like, oh no, you can't build beyond your eyes because it could fall on your head. Well, you know what? I don't think my kid's going to break from a block on his hand, unless somebody else is holding it. But you can see here, I'm going to show you the background because we'll see more of it. But we have these tool benches. We got lucky, somebody donated these tool benches, so we had all these tools. Over here is our office. That was our dramatic play center. Again, there was nothing blocking it. Now, a lot of people say, well, don't your kids run around all the time? And don't they teach you in school that you need to section off everything and define the space so they don't run around, or if they do, then it would just discourage the running? Well, guess what? I kind of disagree with that because they're going to run anyway. You might as well make it safer for them to run and move the furniture out of the way and give them space to do that. But it wasn't out of control because the space was defined. You can see carpets. I think a lot of times you define the space on the floor. The children are closer to the floor, so they kind of see it more. Like if you get down, you'll see the perspective is, I could see that my space is more defined when I'm only this tall than us adults who all of spaces, defined.
Is that little boy building that by himself, or did
Yes.
he let other friends help him?
No, he wouldn't let anyone here. And I was like, okay. I allow that for sometimes.
Okay.
I try to encourage, well, let your friend come in, but if he's like, I gotta do this alone, you know what? Go, because look what he did. And a lot of the other kids were busy in other parts of the room too, because at the same time that I've got this happening, we've got 2 tables full of activities. And I always had, I had 3 tables in that room at the time, so there was always a painting thing out over here, and they loved that. Actually, the same, thank goodness. And then I'd have shaving cream on the other table with the blocks all at the same time, and then maybe like the rubber band boards or something like we saw on another table. So, and there was, the other side of this picture, there was a wet sensory table. The other side over there, that's the dry sensory table. So there was just so many things to choose from. So the kids didn't really, now toddlers almost always do this, they'll all come together. And you can sort of organize a group activity with toddlers because they will naturally just go right where you're going. They're just like right there. They're underfoot. I'd always be like, come on, I'm trying to set this up, and you're already under my feet, and I can't. Because they love to see what you're doing, and then they want to come and get involved. So. And the delight in their eyes. So I walked away, and they had taken the top of the sensory table and dragged it over to the block area and started rolling cars down it, so I had to get a picture. And they figured it out to balance it on the log like that. Nobody taught them that. They just kind of grabbed everything and they just went with it. I think one of the kids probably led the charge, and the rest of them were like, hey, yeah, let's do it. So then they made a ramp for their cars. And there's another block tunnel. That right there, so this little child, like I'm really into like Celtic stuff, obviously I got like these Celtic tattoos, and this is a little Irish child. His family's all about being Irish. And this tunnel right here is exactly like where this tattoo comes from. The New Grange in Ireland is a tomb where when the sun comes up, it comes down, or in the solstice, the light comes through sort of this tunnel of standing stones, like Stonehenge or whatever, where it's two stones and then a stone laying on top. So I just thought that was really cool. I had to take a picture of that. The Celt in me. And there's from the perspective of them through the tunnel, like if the sun came down through there. I guess we're back to the beginning. Unless I missed something. Nope. So that's it for those pictures. Now that's just like, I call that album play. Probably more to it than that, but next we'll talk about dramatic play. I don't have a lot here. I wish I did. We need a lot more. Dramatic play. Okay, so this is probably best for younger toddlers, but we were talking about, we did a theme that week and we did the beach. And so I had a brown towel. So we threw out, we didn't have a sandbox at the center, unfortunately, anywhere. We did have sand in the sensory table, but so I just put out a brown blanket, some beach balls, a couple of books about the beach, and shovels and pails. It was not a big hit because you couldn't really shovel, and I get it. So off to the side, probably like over here somewhere, there was the dry sensory table which had sand and shells, and they could dig and stuff in there. And that was more for like a cozy place to sit and just hang out and look at the books, hit the beach ball around. But it was something. It was a theme. Where I work now, we don't really do themes, and I kind of like it that way. But I do enjoy themes from time to time. This was one of the biggest hits, was the salon. Luckily we had somebody donate this little salon thing. It's kind of this cheap, junky toy. But you don't need that. You can get a mirror, you can kind of make your own, kind of figure out how to make your own little salon. But those scissors, right, is that what you're looking at? Like, scissors are scary, giving children scissors. Well, they make these really great non-hair and clothing cutting scissors. So I always start out with toddlers and early threes with those kinds of scissors. And you can buy them, I don't know, discount school supplies or whatever. So you're going to see these scissors a lot because we use them for dramatic play. The salon. There's an old story, another center I worked at, actually with Lisa Murphy. I think she wrote a paper or something, or an article or a blog about it, where we had a tattoo parlor in our dramatic play because the demographic of children that we were working with, a lot of their families had tattoos. And I think you can have tattoos that you can see at work and you can still be a professional, obviously. So the kids got the washable markers and we're drawing on each other. Okay, well, some of the parents didn't like that so much, so then we turned it into like the teachers went and got tattoos. You can't tattoo each other, but you can tattoo the teachers. So they took their markers to us, and there's some pictures I think on one of Lisa Murphy's blogs with her arm just covered in marker from the kids. And I was, and our other teacher was that day. So you can do, in addition to the salon, you can do a tattoo parlor. It doesn't take much. Okay, so especially with toddlers, the dramatic play is really like not a whole lot with toddlers. Like you'll see, most toddler classrooms, they have the kitchen and the dining room table, and that's usually all you get, maybe babies. Which is okay, that's a good start, especially when they're only 18 months old. There's really not much more that they're gonna dramatize. But this, here's a mixing in art and dramatic play, right? Painting the box red, what do you think it's gonna be? You've probably done this. Working with a roller. And these kids are like, the one in this picture, I think he's like 19 months old right now. really little. He's got big sausage fingers. And then fire truck, fire hat, and there's a hose, which is just a big rope with a duct tape on the end. So eventually, maybe when they're 2.5, 3, they'll start doing more role playing. You know, usually now at this age, I have 18, 24 months, they just kind of sit in the box of the hat, and they look cute, like, I don't have it. There's this picture somewhere. But they just look cute. And then, once in a while, as they get older, you'll see them role playing a little bit. So here's the office. Now, I found that with this demographic of children, at 3 years old, none of them were interested in the kitchen or the dining room table. Like, not one of them. They did not play with the food. They did not, except for throw everywhere. They did not play with the dishes. They did not role play serving tea and cookies and things. I never saw that one time in this group of kids. What I did see was, especially with the office, luckily somebody donated these keyboards. A lot of offices, like big offices, they'll just have these things to throw away, like perfectly good computers and keyboards. And so somebody donated the keyboards, I cut the cords off them, and made an office. And you'll see here we have paper and pens, or pencils and clipboards, and a shelf with envelopes and lots of paper, because what office doesn't have that? Right here, if you can see it, I don't know, there's a headset, like for a phone, hands-free phone, and a microphone that records your board meeting. And then our center updated their phone system, so we got the old phones, and we brought the phones into the classroom, and these made little computers. I'll show you from another angle. So I made these little computer screens out of cardboard, and then there's a flap in the back to hold it up. And then, so what we found is that the children, they'd sit down and they'd be like, and then they'd pick up the phone and they'd have something to say, and they'd put it down and they'd start typing again. And then they would like fold down the cardboard screen like a laptop. And so I'm thinking, I don't see these kids playing dinner and serving food in the kitchen, but they're all about being in the office. So I'm thinking, what are they seeing at home? And I think that's what they're seeing at home, is parents on mobile devices and laptops and doing office stuff at home. Well, one of the kid was like barely 3 one day. There were these 2 children playing, and I'm kind of listening in and watching, cleaning up other parts of the classroom, and I hear them saying, "Honey, did you file those receipts?" So this was like a really early 3s class, 2.5, 3 years old, and they're role playing what they're hearing at home. "Honey, did you file the receipts?" And then the girl got up and took all these papers and envelopes and like stuffed them in that green shelf, and we're moving them around. So they pick up the phone, they grab the pencil, they write down on the paper, they scribble something on the paper, fold it up in the envelope. Of course they can't fold, they fold it all weird and stuff it in the envelope. And I don't have a picture of this, but one time I worked in this program where we had a class of 4s and 5s, and the 3-year-old classroom, I was the 3-year-old teacher. Well, we lost some kids and some teachers, and we had to move the 3s into the 4s and 5s classroom. Well, the 4s and 5s teachers weren't so happy about us 3s coming in and bringing our chaos. But it was amazing to watch what happened, because our writing center, just paper, envelopes, stickers, and we had a big mailbox, like the one you'd see on the side of the road. Within 2 weeks, the 3-year-olds in my class, without any adult interference, were writing their names. Because the older 4s and 5s were playing over there, and the 3s would come waddle on up, and they would listen, and they would watch, and they would be encouraged by the older. I love mixed age groups for this reason. They'd be encouraged by the older children, and within 2 weeks, 3-year-olds were writing their complete names without any adult like drill and kill or anything like that. It was wonderful. And so the same thing could have happened here, I think, if I had some 4s and 5s in my class with my 3s. So here's a little boy at the computer and on the phone. And see, we had the mirror turned around and we put The Office. Kind of reminded me of Dunder Mifflin, the way it's written there. And of course, playing doctor. Who doesn't play doctor? That can become dangerous for children sometimes. I like to put out the doctor stuff and then just put some stuffed animals and call it a veterinarian. And then have an office, like have a table with a receptionist and her phone and her computer and note-taking, and and put up a sign that this is the veterinarian's office, or put out the baby dolls, and it's the pediatrician's office, because they know what that is. That's the thing about some things you have to sort of teach children about. Like these children, I had to teach to play food and dinner and kitchen, but I didn't have to teach them doctor, because they've all been to the doctor 100 times, right? So you just put out the doctor stuff, and they just knew how to use it, for the most part. Where are we? Okay, so I like to do a lot of tools. So again, these kids weren't really playing kitchen, but I dump out the tools, and I flip over a chair, and I just walk away, and they pick up the tools, and they play on the chair. And this kid opened up the sink, and crawled in like a plumber, and there he is with his wrench. And I thought that was so creative. I was like, yeah, I'm lucky I got the picture, because it was over really quickly. A couple of the other kids tried, but they didn't get it. Until you have to lay on your back to fix it. I'm like, well, he must have seen a plumber somewhere. Luckily, we did not see any plumber crack that day. So, tools and chair. Just, you know, a little dramatic play. And they can see the little nuts and bolts. So, you know, we have that nuts and bolts set. And the boards, I call them boards, and the cardboard. So they're going to start connecting these things in their minds, right? Screwdrivers, nuts and bolts. I see real nuts and bolts on chairs. I would rather do the real thing in front of the children. One day I had to fix a shelf. I had to flip it over, get a screwdriver out, take the wheels off because the children were able to push it. And you know those wheels, they'll slide across the room, but then they'll stop and the thing will tip over on somebody. So I was encouraged, do it right in front of the children. Fix it, take the wheels off right in front of the children. So we took the toys off the shelf, flipped it over, got real tools in there, and I fixed the shelf. And the children were like, oh, what's that? And they got to see the real process of taking a shelf apart with real nuts and bolts. But this is, you know, toddlers. The child there has, with the blue wrench, actually has Down syndrome. And he gets, that's one of the things he actually really enjoyed. So there's a lot more you can do with dramatic play. I wish I had more pictures, but I don't. I need to go faster. Sensory. This is fun. So here was, I told you we had that theme with the beach. Well, here's some beach sand with shells, wet sand. And I tried to put, you can see, I put the, like, if you can see, the sand, I kind of piled it up over there so it's almost like a real beach. Because you come out of the water onto the beach because it's at an angle like that. Right? So there's sort of the real thing here a little bit. And this is the concoction. So, okay, you have oobleck. Have you ever played with oobleck? You know, cornstarch and water. So you have oobleck all week. You can actually keep it all week if you let it dry out overnight. Take, you know, don't put the lid on it. It still gets a little smelly. So on Monday morning, I would take the old dry oobleck that dried over the weekend, and you can't really use it again for another week, and dump it in the water table, and then get a bunch of other stuff like coffee grounds or something, and put them in fill containers, flour, salt, whatever you have, and let the kids spoon it in. I got the you know, shredded paper, and they use the tongs to put that in, and they give them the big wooden spoons, and they stir it up. We call it our concoction. They're 3 years old, they can learn big words like concoction. And they love to say it too. And then when they say it not quite right, they get all these looks and attention from adults, and that causes a whole other bunch of problems. So here's some dry chunks of Play-Doh, leftover Play-Doh. Why throw it away when you can dry it out and make sensory activities out of it? You know, dry chunks of Play-Doh, and it's exfoliating for your skin, so it's nice. There we're making the concoction. So now we have coffee grounds, cornmeal, dried Play-Doh chunks, and oobleck in there. And now we're adding watercolor, liquid watercolor with the pipettes. And there's the end product. It's just this slimy, muddy mess, and it's awesome. And they loved it. And then they were done with it, because it was slimy and muddy. And then we threw it away. This was something I did constantly as a child. Those hollow dinosaurs, you know, feed the dinosaur. Everything went down that dinosaur's throat. If I could have cut the bellies open of all my dinosaurs when I was a kid, there would have been everything that I lost in there. All my action figures are probably stuck in a dinosaur somewhere. So I had to show that one. And that's what we call our autumn mix. It's like beans, sunflower seeds, the dried corn, and you know, especially if you do the theme stuff or the Halloween and Thanksgiving stuff, that's sort of and leaves, although those are fake leaves. I prefer to have real leaves. But yeah, that's our autumn mix. That was a nice mix for sensory. There's flubber, suspended flubber, where I would train the children to say, vinegar gets it out, because it's the only thing that'll get that off the clothing. I hate smocks. I don't want to make children wear smocks if I don't have to. And this is the flubber that's made with only liquid starch and glue, not the borax kind. I don't like the borax kind. It just gets kind of crumbly and stupid. Nobody plays with it. But this is all oozy and stringy. But vinegar gets it out. So I would say, what gets it out, children? And they'd go, vinegar gets it out. What are you going to tell your parents? Vinegar gets it out. And then I put a sign on the door that says, if you find a green blob on your child's clothes, vinegar gets it out. Here's oobleck, right? Spatulas. Dollar store, they're a little bendy. They'll bend and break, but you can always reinforce everything with duct tape, and we're going to talk about that later. And this is coffee sand. I took a picture of my house this morning. You go in my front door, it's my kitchen, and there's like all these jugs laying on the floor. There's a box of just recycled, there's like empty Folgers and nut jars and stuff, because that's what your house looks like if you're a preschool teacher. And on my wine rack, there's no wine, but there's two bins. There's a drying pan for drying out the coffee grounds, and then there's a bin that I put them in when they're dry. And then I bring them into the classroom, and that's dried coffee grounds. Oh, that's dried coffee grounds. And these are the scoops that we're going to make from these today. And they're not only scoops, but they're also funnels. So I like to call them funnel scoops. And you can make them. You don't have to buy, you can see the red and blue, you don't have to buy these Lakeshore expensive hard plastic things that if somebody whacks somebody over the head with, the kid's going to be bleeding. These are a little flimsy. They're not quite as strong, so you might not use them with like wet sand, but for coffee sand I call it, it's kind of light and fluffy because it's used coffee grounds that are dried out. And that's our sensory table right now, actually, in my classroom. And there's some more oobleck and spatulas. Again, dollar store spatulas. Those are the plastic ones that you get at the dollar store. Okay, Play-Doh. Everybody does this. You've always got a kid or two in every room that does that, right? The belly squish. And again, it just washes out of clothes. We got to relax about the clothing. And these were those knives I was telling you about. They're the mayonnaise spreaders, these dollar store. And those are the best. So they're like I'll tell the kids with a knife. This is, we'll see more, but that's another dollar store ice cream scoop. And there again are the non-hair cutting scissors. So you got toddlers, early threes, you want to introduce scissors. Here's the best way to introduce scissors. Play-Doh and scissors. Non-hair cutting scissors. And we got these muffin pans, and again, there's 3 different kinds of spatulas from the dollar store, so that's cool. These were hard plastic ones. So spatulas. And so this is sort of like baking. We did some real baking in the classroom, but Play-Doh baking is like, again, dramatic play baking and sensory experience Play-Doh. And this was a fun one with the water table. Shaving cream on top, and then the liquid watercolor with pipettes. So you can see the pretty colors on top, and then you can see the colors swirling around. Can you see that? Because it looks really dark. Let's see if the resolution will change. You can turn the lights off. Does that help? You can kind of see the swirling. Let's leave the lights on for a minute if you don't mind. So then you watch the colors kind of drip down. Like if you're at the level that the children would be at, as they're drip dropping, you're watching and watch the colors come down. It's really cool. It's hard to snap a photo that quickly though. And there's some more orange and red and yellow. You can see that.
So your whole water table is shaving cream? I mean, in that picture?
No.
Okay.
Let me just think. That's water with just shaving cream on the top.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I think that's that.
Oops, let me back. So that's, and then here is it easier to see without the lights? Maybe we'll just go without until we're done. That's baking soda and vinegar and liquid watercolor. So there we go, introducing science. You could probably do that even with toddlers, but as soon as they taste the baking soda, they won't want to do that anymore. But then again, that styrofoam, and I don't know if you can have that in the toddler classroom, but I do use this, I like styrofoam egg cartons just to bring it to school. So I put a little of the baking powder, baking soda in there, and then they drip the vinegar, and then it bubbles up, and they're like, woo! They're all delighted by it. And if you've ever seen the Mentos and Diet Coke thing, that's really a lot of fun too. This is, again, when we had that beach theme, there's the dry sensory table with the real sand. I didn't like the sensory table, so I duct taped the top because it had these weird little troughs or putter all around it. I duct taped the top. This little boy, again, the same one who I was talking about earlier with all the creativity, he lined up all these construction trucks, which I put right in there, and they're facing each other. If you see, there's they're all facing each other. And he walks up and he goes, Mr. Drew, the trucks, they're having a conversation. And I was like, and I think I was like, where did he got that from? And then at some point I noticed his mom picked him up one day and held his little face and said, talk. We're gonna have a conversation, and then she talks about his behavior or whatever. I see where he got that from. He knew that big word, conversation. Water table. This is awesome. I will say the dollar store does have those turkey basters, but they're not real great. The kids, as soon as they put it in their mouth and bite the end, it's that hard plastic that'll crack. So I use duct tape. But I ended up buying the $7 and $8 ones, unfortunately. I had the money at the time, so I did get a few of the more expensive turkey basters because it's the Tupperware kind of plastic that doesn't break even if you chew on it. And turkey basters are a huge hit in the water table. So this is, 2.5, 3 years old turkey basters, 4 or 5 pipettes. You go from large motor like this to small motor, it's still 5 motor, but like this to like this. And the stretchy tubes and funnels. And then right here again, you can see these are I had the gutters cut, and so right there, I had to tape them because they were sharp. And there's a couple of gutters going down. Hopefully the next picture will show. Oh, that's just the setup for another when I had clear tubes in there. And then here you can see the gutters from that same water table without the tubes. So this is indoors, right? So this is a milk crate, another bin, and the two leaning down from the taller water table down to the floor, but it's on a milk crate. Because if it's on the floor, somebody will say you're in violation of the regs because you have a wading pool on the floor. No, it's a sensory table. Get over it. It's on a milk crate here. And then those are those balls I was talking about. Here's another, floating in balls, and then roll balls down the tunnel. Kids will just roll things down ramps all day long. You're going to see a lot of ramps in like everything. Because the kids just love ramps. Here's my current class, a little younger than those last kids. Uh-oh! That one's on the floor! We're in trouble. But guess who cares? Not me. So here we are with these kids, they played the water table before I got there a little bit, but this was like, we're getting this every day. And they never had a ramp to another bin on the floor, so to them it was just like, oh my God, this is the best. So that's what we do now, although we've been taking it outside, which we'll see in a little bit. So there's that from that perspective. And they love to put everything down the ramp and pour the water down the ramp. So there's just another step from there. So there you can see I forgot the towels on the floor. So putting the towels on the floor around the water table also defines the space. Some people have like a mat or something that's square. But putting the towels around, which I forgot in that picture, defines the space. So I didn't have a lot of taking it away from the water table and dumping it in the sand table or anywhere else around the classroom. It really pretty much stayed there without an adult standing there, So there's so much more you can do with sensory. I'm sure you've had good ideas of how to do more than you see here. Oops. But I like to mix it up a lot with that. We already did dramatic play, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, outside. Bring it outside. The classroom, the outside classroom, is just as important or even more important than the inside classroom. So one of the things that you will face on the playground when you're outside, and I'm sure your supervisors will know what I'm talking about, is what I like to call, and several people I know like to call, chickens on the fence, where you have teachers. Did you see that episode of American Idol last night? And the lady and whatever, and you're talking, and the kids are over here beating the crap out of each other, and the teachers are not really paying attention to what's happening. Well, one of the ways, and so, I worked in programs, when you work in a team, you have to remind each other sometimes, hey, pay attention to the kids. Well, if you got somebody, pay attention to the kids, you look like you're passing judgment on each other. But when you have a good team, and you're all friends, and you all love what you do, you can remind each other in a funny, fun way. Chickens on the fence! Chickens on the fence! Now that was a little hard for me as a male, talking to a bunch of women who were over by the fence talking, because then they took it a certain way, like they're chickens or something, like women are chickens, because of some stereotypes. But we had a fun time, because I think I got called a chicken a few times too, and somebody would be like, chickens on the fence! Because I'd wander over and I'd be chit-chatting with the teacher, and my back's to the children, and so we would, it wasn't mean-spirited, it was all in good fun and friendly, and we always be like, chickens on the fence! So to avoid chickens on the fence, you bring dangerous materials outside, because then you're gonna feel obligated to be right there with your toddlers or whatever age, but I'm gonna say toddlers because if you put wooden blocks on a playground with 18 months to 36 months, somebody's gonna get hit with a block and they're gonna bleed. So unless you have the adult right there. So to avoid the chicken on the fence, you get out more things outside just like you have inside, you bring it outside. And then you've got to be there to manage it, and facilitate the learning. And how do that? How do I do that? I must have done something to make it better. Okay, so here's the tongs and those plastic balls outside. He's about to walk up to the slide. So there he is, dropping it down the slide. Oh, look, there's blocks over there. There better be an adult around, so they're having a little race with the tongs and balls down the slide. These are 2-year-olds. I forgot to show you this picture. I'll just pass this around. This was another dramatic play. I wish I had it on the computer. But camping. And those are real logs and just paper towel tubes, and we painted this thing that looks like fire and made a campfire. So we got real blocks out next to the balls and the tongs and the ramps or sliders. But we do always have an adult right there, especially at the time. And blocks outside. And so here's blocks outside with stones and pine cones added into our blocks.
There's a little thing on the side that you can scroll over to increase the size.
Oh! Awesome. Okay, so this, big blocks on the playground. Big blocks, otherwise known as boxes. So there's a child standing in the box, building the blocks, building a block structure with boxes. Save all your boxes, especially for toddlers. Oh my goodness, they'll just sit in boxes all day. You want to get something done over here? Put a bunch of boxes out over there, enough for every kid, and they'll just sit there and you can get your other work done. Not that I would promote you being away from the children. Sometimes you got to get stuff done. This is a game that children invented, I think just turned 2, with a hula hoop and a ball. The child took the hula hoop and started pushing the ball around like this. And it was awesome. And I'm like, where did they even think of such a thing? And then we started playing it, and I started playing it. I was like, this could be like the next sport, because then if you don't move it just right, it goes through the hoop in the other direction from where you're trying to move it. And it was really cool to watch the process of them learning how to move their bodies in that way. Toddler, 2-year-olds. I wish I had more for older kids, but it's been a really long time since I've worked with older children. Lacrosse. This child learned how to play lacrosse with a shovel and a ball. It's the same format. He learned, and I'm like, hey, maybe he's going to be a lacrosse player someday. Who knows? More paper towel tubes and boxes. Kids, they turn into swords, they turn into binoculars, telescopes for pirates, and talk through them. There's so much you can do with paper towel tubes. Don't throw them away. And don't throw away your apple boxes. Oh, now they're playing with cars down the slide. And here's art and pre-writing outside. You can do art outside. And here's painting outside. We do roller painting in the classroom with real paint. Well, outside we do roller painting with water and on the bricks, and chalk sometimes. So that's an easy one. And paint the fence like Karate Kid. I like to do a lot of Karate Kid with the kids. So we're like, paint the fence, and you're learning Kung Fu right now. You didn't even know. Okay, this is a little controversial. So the swings that you plop the kid in the swing and then you push them and strap them in and they just push them. There's not a lot of learning going on there. I've even heard a rumor the new regs are going to ban swings, which I'm sort of disappointed about.
For all ages or just little?
I think everybody, because it's too passive. I kind of disagree with that, because there can be a lot of learning going on and attachment and bonding when you're pushing a kid.
Just stimulating.
Yeah, and that's, I think, where we could argue that we disagree with that, maybe. I don't know, I hope it doesn't go through. But in the meantime, while our swings were broken, you can go to Home Depot, it's my favorite place to shop for a child care, and create a rope swing. So this, I was going to get PVC, and the guy there said it would crack. Well, I wish I got PVC, because now this has a big bend in it. This is just a string in there. So I'm going to play with the materials, but watching this process, I put this swing up. This was probably one of the best processes of large motor learning that I have ever seen. Was just really watching to see what the children would do. They're just 2 years old, if that. The swing is just a couple of inches, that's a few inches, like 3 inches, because that's his knee. So they're not going to fall off the swing and get hurt, because it's only as tall, they're only further off the ground than they are standing up. They're just the same height standing up as they would be sitting in the swing. So there he is trying to figure out how to use it. So there's kind of the whole thing. You can see it comes out like a triangle, and then there's one rope up above to the swing set. So he's trying to figure it out, and then it's not him, but she got it. She figured out how to, to watch them figure out, first it's at their knees, so they do this, and then they fall over because it's, behind the knee. And then they have to figure out how to get it just right underneath the butt cheeks. That's kind of hard if you've seen children trying to figure out how to get their butt in the swing just right, especially a swing that's just a tube that's that big around. But she got it just right. Within a couple of weeks, she was a pro. I have another kid who I just noticed a couple of weeks. She's a pro, and she's even figured out she's not even 3 or just 3, how to hold on to that and not only push herself with her feet, but also drag a foot and pivot on it so she starts to spin herself around. And then you watch her spin with her foot, one foot down in the stones, while she's kind of doing this weird little dance spinning around in the swing. And she's an expert at it. It's amazing to watch the process, because they didn't know how to do it. Not one of the children knew how to use that swing, and within 2 weeks, I think pretty much all of them could get on it and swing. And they're all toddlers, young toddlers. So, got it! And there's our water tables outside. Those were the ones I told you about. They're like $500 a piece over there. Hard plastic that we cracked the first ones. So don't buy those. But that's kind of our setup. Over here, again, ramps. This is a shorter table, taller table, so no ramps down. Over here, there was a tree removed, so there's like that big muddy, I wanted to make a mud pit. So then they just pour the water down there and play in the stones and mud. Sponges, they love the water table outside. And there they are. This is a toddler playground. Some more pictures of the water table outside. And I think we're getting close. There, back to the chickens. I gotta speed things up because we're running a little behind. See if I can talk any faster. What happened to the arrow, back arrow? And now we're going to do a little bit about, you have a packet with finger plays. I'm right clicking on everything, that's why it's not working. So, I'm going to show you my favorite finger plays. So this one, alligator pie. Now here's the process behind it, right? It's just fun, right? It's just something fun you do. Not really, there's a process. So we want to teach children self-control. So this one teaches volume control, especially. So we start out the first time through in a whispering voice in a small hand. So you guys can do it with me or not, whatever you want to do. And it goes, alligator pie, alligator pie. Don't take away my alligator pie. You can take away the green grass, take away the sky, but don't take away my alligator pie. And so with toddlers, especially when they're pre-language, you want to keep that beat, keep that rhythm, right? So then we go right into a normal indoor voice, which I don't like to say indoor and outdoor, but you know what I mean. So you go through it again, alligator pie, and then you go back, alligator pie, and then right back from the loudest back to the whisper. So that way, it teaches, and they do, and you watch them do it, and they will do it right. They won't, you're gonna have the one smart aleck when he's 3.5 will be like, when you're doing the whispering, he'll be doing the yelling, and when you're doing the yelling, he'll be doing the whispering. But there's always one. I think I was that one. So that's a fun finger play you guys can use for teaching self-control, which is very important. And the other one I really like is this one. It goes like this. I found some of these pictures online. It goes way up high in the apple tree, and then you make a smile. Two little apples smiled at me, and they're turning and smiling at me. I shook, here's the part boys really like, right? I shook that tree as hard as I could, and down came the apples, good. And then I do this because I had a class of kids who had to have their apples cut into slices. Really? When I was a kid, you picked it off the tree and you went, and you loved it that way. And then you wanted to eat turkey legs at the Renaissance Festival back then, the barbaric way of eating things. We need to go back to some of that barbarism. Let's see. And then one of the kids' favorites right here. Especially toddlers like this. This one, now these three are, I'm talking about specifically, I think for toddlers who are pre-language Because as I've done these every day, we do the same thing in circle time every day. A couple different songs, different books, but we end it with the same 3 finger plays because children who did not speak at all are doing it, and they're starting to speak. And this is like that. It's amazing to see them learn to talk and come out of their little shells, and their personalities are starting to come out. It's wonderful. So this one goes like this. 2 fat sausages sizzling in a pan. One goes pop and the other goes bam! And then of course, they love that. Well, there's a couple things. One is toddlers can't really do this. Usually they do this. And so I say it's okay if you do the fingers until you can do the thumbs. So you watch that process of the fingers to the thumbs. And then you do the pop, and then sometimes you can shake, change it up and shake things up a little bit and hesitate before the BAM! And then BAM! Over here, and you just like, scare the kids. The first time I did a working interview in a classroom, and I made a child cry when I did that. They wanted, I'm like, here's my working, come do circle time. Oh, great, this is my working interview. And I had these little toddlers, and some little girls started crying when I, BAM! That was a lot of fun. I got the job. I did get the job. I'm not going to do the hat game and the potty training song, but the potty training song is kind of funny. I sort of invented it. The hat game is fun. The hat game teaches names, gives that child that individual attention that they need, right? Especially at gathering time or circle time, whatever you call it. Potty training song, you got a bunch of kids potty training. That's always fun. I do want to read some funny quotes because I was going to do this every 10 minutes as the hook because you're supposed to have a 10-minute so you remember what I'm saying. But one of the things, especially with the older kids, this was when I was working with older children mostly, they say the funniest things. So often we come with a notebook and say, tell us your story. And then we would write it down and then maybe write it down nicer and post it or give it to the parents. So this one child, John, 4 years old, said, boys between boys make super boys. Girls between girls make super girls, and baby between baby makes super baby. I thought that was kind of funny. Another child, Nate, just turned 3, said to me one day, he held up this little car, and he said, Mr. Drew, look, the car has poopy. It's in his diaper. This one child, so randomly, he had just turned 3, and he just was, I don't know, he was probably just, I have to say, it's the same kid that said they're having a conversation. And he built all those cool things. He's just like playing at the table and he looks over and he's like, iPads and iPods don't like liquid.
He's so cute.
The same kid just randomly was like, girls are dollies. Okay? And here's the kicker. This is probably one of the most amazing things, especially for me. My other alternative life is I'm a little bit of a political activist, which I think was where the Muppets are, where I work with children and the Jedi thing, the political active. That's kind of how I look at it. This child just randomly comes to me out of the blue and he goes, I'm going to be the dictator of the whole world. I don't know where this boy got that from. I was like, he's just turned 3 and I'm going to write that one down. So that was a good one. And so I like to do circle time with the older kids. I shouldn't show you these names, but here I'll read through a few of them. What are you thankful for? Nothing. Food. I don't know. A chickie. Presents. Presents. For mayonnaise and toys. Playing. Mommy and Daddy. Mommy and Daddy. Mommy can take me to my house. My mommy and daddy are and Nikki, which is the little girl's brother. Tell me about rules. Sharing. No hitting. You walk and you read books. I run in my family. No hitting and sharing books. No hitting. No! No hitting. Cozy corner. Okay, in that class, if you could not make responsible choices, you had to go over to cozy corner and just do something relaxing for a little while. Don't hit people and don't slap. Clean up after play. Mommy cleaned up my toys and I went to timeout. What can we do with some apples? Glue on the apples, paint them, paint with them. I can eat it, you can grow them, eat them and crunch them and swallow them. Eat them, make ponytails with them. Eat them, paint with them. Put them up the picture. Put them up in the tree and reach them. Who's in your family? Lots of cousins. My cousins. I got a family. Daddy, mommy, my brother. That's pretty much usually. And of course, the kid who said I'm going to be the dictator of the whole world said nothing. Name one kind of bug. Okay, here's a good one, right? Here's some advertisement for a company that I will never work for. Doodle bugs. A fly is a bug, a firebug. A bee, a bug is white. A funny fly, a bee. A boo bug, a bing bug. Name an animal that lives in the ocean. Octopus, a fish, a shark. Fish, octopus, sheep. She says with a sheepish grin. So one girl goes, sheep. A shark, a whale, a dolphin. Dolphin. Tell me about the beach. Trucks and cups. Now this is the child who lined up the trucks on the sand table where there were all those cups. As he keeps adding, and he was saying this, adding toy trucks to our dry sand table. Because I don't make the children sit for circle time. I don't say, come over and you must sit down. Because what I found is that if you let them, if they're not interested in sitting, you know, because I think they're going to get enough to sit still and be quiet when they're in the public schools, right? I don't even want to go there. We don't have time. So I'm like, you know, I encourage them. I try to make it fun so they do, and they usually do. But if they're not into it, a lot of kids are kinesthetic learners, so they need to hold something so that they can sit still, or they need to go off and do something. So I'll have a few things out. But I always notice that they'll look back over at what we're doing. They'll join in to the chant or finger play or song from playing in the sensory table. So I'm asking these questions. Kids are sitting there answering, waiting for their turn to answer, and this boy is over at the sand table, still paying attention, still participating in circle time, and saying trucks and cups, which in his mind is completely relevant because he's playing in our pretend beach. So anyway, we'll continue here. Tell me about the beach. I play with the toys, sand, swimming. I play with sand and the books. Seashells in there. I like the beach. Mommy and Daddy take me to the beach. What do you like to paint with? I like pink. Guess what? That was a girl. Orange, blue. I like blue. Orange and red. I like all colors. Red, pink, paper. I like to paint with paper, which we're going to do, so that's good. She likes it. So those are just a few little fun things that you can do just with the answer question and just see the things that come out of these children's brains and mouths. They're just amazing. So if you guys are you feeling like you need some movement? Right? No? Maybe not. You're like, well, I do these little dances that I like to call the silly pants dance, and I guess I'll demonstrate since I'm up front here on stage. So these are called Mr. Drew's silly pants dances, and you can probably make up your own, but here's a couple of them, right? So this is, each one of these has kind of a story of something that happened to the child, and I don't have time to do it all, but so this one's called the pee-pee pants dance. So you see this when children are potty training. So it's like on the tiptoes, oh, I gotta go to the bathroom, pee-pee pants dance, and then the poopy pants dance. Sometimes it's already coming out or it's already out there, right? And then this is the sassy pants dance, right? You've seen that girl, every classroom, preschool classroom has that little girl that stands like this and is all sassy all the time. So the sassy pants dance, and then the ants in your pants dance. So this is like a good way to start circle time to get the, you know, instead of shake, shake, shake your wiggles out, you could do that song every day. Or you could do some of these crazy things. And then there's the fancy pens dance. Fancy pens. You guys stick up your pinky and do a little fancy pens, because my pens are fancy and you must use your pinky in there when you sip your tea. Smarty pants dance. Ha 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 ha. Funky pants dance. Boom, 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 boom. Play the bass guitar. Sometimes I'll use a kid and pick up a kid and play the kid like they're a guitar. They love that. They'll come up to me, play me like a guitar. And then I pick them up and I play them like a guitar. The prancing pants dance is where you like sort of prance like a horse. You know, and then we've got the snotty pants dance. Now. And the scaredy pants dance. Woo! And oh, here's a good one. The gassy pants dance. And the turkey. Yeah, right. They'll love that. And then raspberry spinning. Turkey pants dance. So you hold your arms like wings, and these all came from like when our school would always windows and these turkeys would come out all the time. And they would be walking in rows. There'd be like 20 turkeys coming out in the parking lot, looking around for whatever. We chased one once. It was a lot of fun, but. And they bobbed their little heads forward like that, and the kids were laughing hysterically when we did that. And then there's the sweaty pants dance, whoo, which I'm feeling right now. And then there's the lazy pants dance, you know, like the slacker, hands in the pocket, lazy pants dance. And then the pull up your pants dance, because kids have to learn to pull up their pants after they use the potty. You got to reach in the front, reach in the back, and the sides. And then, of course, there was the hammer pants dance. Stop! Hammer time. That's what I'm saying. So there's just a few. You can make them up as you go. And they all come from some kind of story of each child that I had some experience with. So now we're going to look at the art things real quick, and then we're going to do a bunch of making so you can hopefully we can do it fast. So the art is actually the most pictures, so I'll probably just scroll through them real quick so you can see. So you've got a handout that shows the 20 basic scribbles. I'm not going to open it up, but if you look at that, that's from, I think her name's Rhoda Gart. I forget her name, but she went around all over the world, collected over 1 million samples of children's art from pretty much every culture she could find, and found that these are all universal. You will not naturally draw a stick figure. I do not like drawing stick figures for children. I will not draw for children, period, myself. But you will notice that these are all universal symbols from every culture until their cultural art is taught to them. Their culture teaches their art to them. So you can look through that at some point, but that's you will see that. I like to put those up on the wall at the writing center, and then have the children's examples, and we'll see as age. Generally, with the age, they progress through those same, and one step at a time, every time. So you go to some centers, and this is what you find. Who made these? Teachers. Teachers really made these. Same thing with these. And these. If I were to, only because I know about this, if I didn't know, I wouldn't know any better, but if I were a parent, I would not want to send my children here. Just by looking at their art. And the reason I can say that here is because I've been here and I've seen your art and I know that you guys are doing it right. And this is what your board should look like. The children made this, right? Of course I put it all up on the board. We want a medal that time. See, this is 3D art up here, if you can follow the cursor. And you'll see some examples of that. I have this picture here for you to see a little bit later. So here's some more examples. Here's more 3D art up at the top. But this is what your art board should look like. I mean, generally speaking, not the cookie cutter stuff where they all look the same. Because then you know it's not process-oriented art, it's product-oriented art, and it's usually the teacher being mean or micromanaging to the child, and the child is getting pretty much nothing out of it. So those are a bunch of good ones. So here's the 3D art, right? Popcorn. Now these are the non-cornstarch, these are the styrofoam ones. So you get toothpicks and pipe cleaners, and everybody's got packing peanuts somewhere, right? You can get them from parents, you can get them from your own home if you have them. And just creative, just build. I say, here, build! And then they create these things. This kid just made this big, giant, long, huge, awesome thing. Just 3. Here's another one. A lot of spindles coming out of this one, the toothpicks. It's kind of spindly, the thing she's making. And then there's the cornstarch packing peanuts, where you just take water or liquid watercolor and paint them on, and then once they're wet, they stick together. Sometimes they look like just a big globby when they get too wet, and I've had a few that came out like that. Then we have some that come out like that, and that, a horse. Child built that, no adult around, and he just looked at me and he said, a horse. So I wrote, a horse. And it looks like a horse. And there's a little snake. She didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. And then that was just the big, tall 3D structure this child just built. And we actually ended up putting those, if you didn't see it on the board, it was on the board, so it was sticking out, and the weight did not make it fall down, so that was cool. So that it's not, I do glue it to the cardboard, but that's all stuck together with the water. So it held together forever. And then you can buy the colored ones, like I think that's sort of a rip-off, it seems like, because you can get the other ones for free and paint them yourself, or you can, I think they're kind of expensive, but you can buy those colored ones, they're the exact same thing. And then these pretty colored little blobs. And there they are painting on the glue, or painting on the water, to stick them together. This is bubbles. Well, they're a little young for this. I think the 4s and 5s would really get this, but I introduced it with the 3s to see where they'd go with it. You can see right here, if you can see, one bubble actually made it. It's hard to get bubbles to work. I can almost never get bubbles to actually come out of the thing when you blow them out. But if you put, liquid watercolor will not work in the bubble solution. I think you do have to use food coloring. And then we did get some, I wish I had better pictures, but we did get a few where the bubbles pop on the paper and it looks really cool. And this is rollers, like the Play-Doh rollers with bubble wrap wrapped around it. They kind of slide, they don't roll. But you probably experience that with the roller painters too. Those roller painting brushes never roll unless you buy the real expensive ones from Home Depot. Bubble wrap prints. And there's the process. Paint the bubbles however you want, and then you put your paper on top. This is those little stretchy rubber bugs. There's like spiders and creepy crawlers and whatever, and the pictures come out really kind of nice. And this one's one of my favorites because he took the worm, the little inchworm, and he squiggled it all across this paper here. Keep pointing here like you guys can see it. And the worm inched his way there. And then here, so we had this parent who works at a Hallmark store or whatever, and every time a holiday would be over with, they took everything off, and it was all going to the trash. Well, she brought them to us, and we made collage out of them. Those little, these are these little jars where there's a brush inside the cap, so they paint the glue on that way. I don't like squeeze glue. I mean, we can learn other ways to learn this. We don't need to squeeze a whole bottle of glue all over the table to learn that. And then sometimes we fill that with red paint, and at the beauty salon we paint the girls' fingernails and toenails and other things. And so this little girl is very creative. Now those are real scissors, as we had progressed from the non-hair cutting. So here she is being very creative. Her mother was she's an art professor at U of R, so I think art is in her blood. This is distance painting. That's just a paintbrush on a really long stick. But you know how much they loved it? I was like, really? That doesn't sound all that impressive, but it was actually really awesome. Excuse how dirty my easel is. This is when we didn't have an easel, so I just flipped over a table and taped the paper on there and then got black paint and we did distance painting that way. We took it outside too. Feather painting. Those are just those little fake, you know, those stupid little feathers. I hate those things. I want big feathers, really, for this. But the painting, look at it. It looks like feathers when you're done with the picture. So it looks really cool, which I think brings us to, oh, I missed it. Fly swatter painting. I was going to do that here today, but I have to give a speech at a political convention after this, so I don't want to have paint all over my face. This is just liquid watercolor and glue on wax paper. It kind of beads up and makes a cool, like it feels, you know, like braille or whatever. You kind of get that sensory experience after it dries. But then you can also put paper on top of it and do crayon rubbings after you make your own picture with the glue. This was a ramp that I created from 2 styrofoam inserts that were to protect the corners of a TV or whatever. I duct taped them together and then duct taped them to a big plastic block, and it rolls. And then you dip the golf ball in the paint and roll it down into the box with the paper. I eventually learned that they fall into the box and then they barely roll. So I ended up, I don't have a picture of it, I ended up cutting the box so the ramp just went right down into the box. But that's fine. And this is white crayon and then you liquid watercolor over it. So the wax crayon resists the water or repels the water. So we teach a little language with this too, like repels. It repels. You might work in a place that wants you to do a lot of, like, you've probably seen this where, like, you're doing an Eric Carle week or Dr. Seuss, or this is Jan Brett. We were doing a Jan Brett. We were reading Jan Brett books. All her books had these beautiful borders. So I said, put a beautiful border around your picture. So we glued these strips of fabric and other things around. This is art from my current class. These kids were like 18 months old. This was a string painting, which are actually, we used instead of those really big, fluffy, what do you call it, pipe cleaners, the big fluffy ones. And so then you fold the paper in half, and then you dip it into the paint, fold the paper in half, and pull it out. And they come out like this. Really beautiful. And here's marble painting with paper towel tubes. And these are what I call mini fly swatter paintings. We have a little bit of the materials over there, but those are those little rubber things that you put under the throw rug so it doesn't move. Fold that up, tape it onto the thing, and you got a brush. Mini fly swatter painting. It doesn't splatter as far, and it has a little bit of a different pattern and feeling. This is probably one of the most beautiful pieces of art I have ever seen. I'll pass it around. Please be careful with it. I would like to take that and I would put a frame around that and I'd make prints and I'd sell it for hundreds of millions of dollars, but it's not my work, so I can't do that. This was made by the child that said he wanted to be the dictator of the whole world. And here's another one. I don't remember which child made this, but this one's a lot like that last one, but bigger.
What'd you use?
That right there, that's popcorn. We're gonna make those too. It's popcorn and knee-high nylons. So save your old, knee-highs or whatever. And it has, I call it bungee painting because it sort of has this bungee effect. It'll go boing, 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 and then you hit the paper and it explodes. And so when you first get the paint on, it looks like that, which almost looks like those gardenia flowers blossoming. But then as the paint deteriorates, it looks like fireworks. I don't know if I have a good picture of the fireworks. This is like kush rings and just random toys from the classroom. This is pendulum painting. It's a brush on a string, and the tape and the paper on the floor, like a pendulum. Takes a little skill because the string doesn't always move the way you want it to when you're moving your hands, So it's a new concept for some of the younger children. Pine cone paintings. Look at how beautiful that picture is. Just big pine cones. And these, we're going to make these brushes. These are the pipe cleaner brushes. I'll pass this around. I can find it. Where'd you go? We're going to make these pipe cleaner brushes. And then you can spin them and then the colors all mix together. Because what I typically do, because this is where you see the difference between process-oriented art and product-oriented art. With process-oriented art, it's all about the process. It's not about the product. So you don't have that receipt for the parents every night. Usually that's how parents see, like, what'd you make in art today? Well, that's the receipt to show they did something at school. Well, I think you can mix those two worlds. You can have a beautiful product and still get all the process out of it that you'll ever get. So I think these look nice. You spin them, you mix the colors. There's a little bit of learning going on about color mixing. This child, I suspect, had autism or Asperger's. She wouldn't really do anything without her little kitty. And so I wanted her to paint. She never painted. This is the first time she ever painted in our classroom. I don't think she ever did again. But we were doing potato prints, and she would paint with her little puppet. With her potato. That was the only way she'd do it, is if the puppet held the potato, not her. This one, I actually made that just to show the Eric Carle unit. I don't really like doing that, but sometimes you have to do what you're told. And so I sort of made like a little representative using those brushes are the feathers but on sticks. And I sort of painted up the little Eric Carle thing and then stuck on the other paper. Here's just random toys, Legos and gears and bristle blocks and things. Again, and pegboards, the pegs from the pegboards. Beautiful pictures. This is a Lazy Susan hinge on two boards, and then you tape on the paper and get out the markers, and you got beautiful spin art. Here's again cars and sponges and the primary colors. This is spritz painting art. This is a little personal, but I use Burt's Bees deodorant, and they come in these little aluminum spritz. So here's a 2-year-old, 2.5. They can't do it yet. They barely get the thumb, so there's not a lot of paint there, which is okay, because sometimes they do too much. And here's where they're going to do too much. So they're just starting with the thumb here, right? So they can't do 2 fat sausages, but I give them that thing, they figure out the way to hold it. It's like this, and then they start learning how to do this. And eventually, by the time they're 4 or 5, they've gone through the process enough, they're going to be little experts with those spritz paintings. And they come out really pretty. But they can do that, but you know how much watercolor gets wasted when you pull the trigger and spray? But those are nice too. And this is liquid watercolor, straws, blowing it around the paper. And pre-writing. This girl is, I think she just had her 2nd birthday last month, and we give her scrap paper and crayons. Now these crayons, if you notice, for toddlers, every time a crayon gets thrown, it breaks and you can't use it anymore because it's broken in half and it's a choking hazard. Well, I don't have the big egg crayons yet. I want to get those. So for now, I reinforce them with duct tape. Guess what? When they get thrown, they don't break. So, but you can see here, she's got from that handout, she's got a couple of the squiggles and things. You better get moving. Hope you guys don't mind going a little later. Here's again, crayons first, then liquid watercolor. It repels the water. So here's what we're going to make. It's really small, but that's how you cut the milk carton to make shovel scoops. And I like to call them shovel scoops or funnels, shovel funnels or scoop funnels. You see how that's done? And then we're going to make these brushes, except for the blue one. because I don't have those, but here's one of the shovel scoop funnels, rubber band brush, and these are the mini fly swatters, pipe cleaner brush, and that's the nylon, I call it the bungee paint. And then there's the tongs if we have time to make the tongs. So that's it for the slideshow and the video portion. Thank you very much for being my videographer. And then hopefully I might